The airport police stopped me at security, and I couldn't understand why. Then I found out my own parents had tricked me to make me miss Grandpa's inheritance hearing. Stick with me, because this is where everything in my life started to fall apart. I was standing there, my backpack slung over my shoulder, staring at the agent who was shaking his head. My boarding pass? Suddenly invalid. My stomach dropped. I tried to explain, showing my ID, my ticket on my phone, anything to prove I had a right to be on that plane. But no matter what I did, the machine beeped red, and the agent looked at me with that practiced, impatient stare. Panic bubbled up. I pulled out my phone and called my parents, hoping they could fix whatever mistake had happened. The line clicked, and there was Rhett's calm voice. "Maris, what's going on? Are you okay?" And Leora's sweet concern layered over it, asking if I'd had breakfast if I was stressed. My heart ached with relief at first, until I noticed the tiny pause before they spoke, the subtle smirk I could almost hear in Rhett's tone. Something didn't feel right. Minutes dragged. I asked them again about the flight, about the hearing. That's when Leora casually mentioned that I must have misunderstood the departure time. Confused, I tried to argue, but the words stuck in my throat. It hit me suddenly, sharp and cold. This wasn't a mistake. They had known exactly what they were doing. They had lied to me, kept information, and now I was trapped in the airport, unable to reach my grandfather or the hearing that could change everything. Betrayal hit me harder than anything before. The people I trusted most, the ones who were supposed to guide me, were the ones who had sabotaged me. My hands shook as I held the phone, realizing this wasn't just about a missed flight. It was about control, greed, and a plan that I hadn't even seen coming. As I slumped onto a bench, my mind raced, not with tears, but with questions and a sudden surge of determination. If this was their game, I wouldn't be a passive player. I would find a way through, and I would not let them win. The first seed of revenge had been planted, and I knew I couldn't ignore it. I finally got home that evening, exhausted and angry, my stomach still tied in knots from the airport fiasco. I dropped my bag on the couch and sank into it, staring at the walls of my childhood living room. Something felt off, and I couldn't shake the gnawing suspicion that my parents hadn't just made a small mistake. They had done this on purpose. I started thinking back over the past few weeks. The way my mom, Leora, had forgotten to remind me about the exact flight time. The way my dad, Rhett, had insisted I didn't need to double-check the documents for Grandpa's hearing, telling me it was all under control. At first, I thought I was imagining things. But the more I remembered, the more it became clear. They had been setting this up for weeks, little by little, making sure I would be completely unprepared. I remembered how Leora had casually told me I didn't need to bring certain papers, even though I had asked about them multiple times. And Rhett's subtle dismissals whenever I tried to confirm my itinerary. It wasn't random forgetfulness, it was careful, deliberate. They had created a perfect trap, and I had walked right into it. The anger hit me like a punch. I felt trapped in a world where the people who were supposed to protect me were the ones trying to hurt me the most. Every memory of their fake concern at the airport came rushing back, twisting in my chest. I realized I had been blind to their patterns, too trusting, too naive to see the betrayal coming. I paced the living room, trying to make sense of it all. How could they do this? How could the people who raised me, who told me they loved me, plan something so cruel? The sense of hurt and disbelief was overwhelming, but underneath it, a spark of clarity began to grow. This wasn't an accident, and I couldn't act like it was. I knew I had to pay attention now, to watch every move, to notice every lie. The betrayal wasn't a one-time act. It was a pattern, a strategy. And if I wanted to protect myself, and what was rightfully mine, I couldn't let them get away with it. Something had shifted inside me. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was alert, awake, and ready to fight back. I couldn't stop thinking about what my parents had done, so the next morning, I decided to see Grandpa Eldon in person. I drove to his house quietly, not wanting anyone to know I was coming. When I arrived, he opened the door with a look of surprise, quickly followed by concern. "Maris, where have you been?" "I was worried sick," he said, his voice tight. I tried to explain, but before I could finish, he held up a hand. "I know why you missed the hearing." His eyes were sad, tired, but there was a hint of something else, almost like relief. "What do you mean?" I asked, confused. Grandpa sighed and led me into his living room. "I had a feeling your parents might interfere," he said slowly. "They've always been careful about keeping control over family matters. I hoped you'd get there on time, but I also knew I had to protect you in case they tried something. I felt my heart drop. Protect me? Grandpa, did they try to block me? He nodded, looking down at his hands. Yes, they did. They were worried that if you got involved, they wouldn't have access to certain things, money, properties, assets. They've always put their own gain above family loyalty. The words hit me like a punch. All this time, I had trusted them completely. I had thought they cared about me and wanted what was best for me. But the truth was clear now. Their greed had almost cost me everything I had a right to. My grandfather's calm, measured words couldn't soften the shock. I sank into the chair across from him, trying to process it all. So, all this time, they were planning to steal my inheritance? I asked, my voice shaking. Grandpa leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine. I'm afraid they were. That's why I made sure certain precautions were in place. You may have missed the hearing, but there are still ways to secure what's yours. You just have to be careful, watch their moves, and be smart about it. I felt a mix of grief and anger boiling inside me. The people I loved most had tried to ruin me, but now, knowing the truth, I also felt a surge of determination. I wasn't going to let them win. I would fight for what was mine, for my future, and for the family legacy my grandfather had trusted me with. As I left his house, my mind raced with plans and possibilities. Betrayal had been revealed, but so had a path forward. And I knew deep down that my revenge wasn't just a thought anymore. It was inevitable. I didn't want anyone to see me, but curiosity got the better of me. I quietly parked across the street from my parents' house and watched through the window. Inside, Rhett and Leora were sitting at the kitchen table, papers spread out everywhere, whispering to each other. At first, I didn't hear much, but as I focused, their words became clear. They'll never know what hit them, Rhett said with a smirk. Maris thinks she can fight for the inheritance, but we can make sure she gets nothing. Leora nodded, her face calm, almost smiling. It's not just the money. We can control her trust, her connections, even her place in the family. She won't see it coming. I felt my stomach twist. Every word cut deeper than I imagined. The people who were supposed to love me, who I had depended on my whole life, were plotting against me, not just to block the inheritance, but to take everything else too. My future, my relationships, my sense of safety. Rhett leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. Honestly, I never saw her as more than a pawn. Everything we do is for us. We've worked too hard to let some naive girl ruin it. Leora added, exactly. She thinks she's smart, but she's predictable. We just need to stay one step ahead, and everything she cares about will be out of reach. I could feel my hands shaking. I had always believed in them, trusted them blindly, but now I realized the truth. They didn't care about me. Not really. I was a tool for their greed, a means to secure their wealth and status. Their smiles, their advice, their concern. It had all been an act. Betrayal wrapped around me like a cold, heavy blanket. I couldn't believe it, yet every memory of their lies, every missed opportunity, every hidden manipulation suddenly made sense. They weren't just selfish, they were ruthless, and I had been living in their shadow, unaware of how carefully they had planned to control me. As I drove home, my anger burned hot. I knew now that nothing they said or did could ever be trusted. They had shown their true colors, and I could see them clearly for the first time. Rhett and Leora weren't just flawed, they were my enemies. And if they thought they could take everything from me without consequences, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. For the first time, I didn't feel scared. I felt alive, alert, and ready. I knew I couldn't face this alone, so the next day, I called Grandpa's lawyer, Cassidy Harlow. Cassidy had always seemed fair and smart, the kind of person you could trust, and I hoped she could help me figure out a way to protect what was mine. When I walked into her office, she greeted me warmly, but I could tell she was serious. Maris, I've heard about what happened at the airport, she said. Your parents have been making moves behind your back, and it's worse than most people realize. Relief washed over me. Finally, someone on my side. I explained everything I had discovered. The blocked flight, the manipulations, the plans I had overheard. Cassidy listened quietly, nodding, taking notes. You're right to be careful, she said. There are people around you who aren't what they seem. Some of your family friends, the ones you think are allies, are actually working with your parents. They want to make sure you don't find out the full truth. Her words hit me like a slap. I had trusted those people, thinking they were on my side. Family friends, neighbors, even some distant relatives. I had believed they cared, that they would help if I was in trouble. But now I realized they had been keeping secrets, feeding my parents information, and trying to keep me in the dark. I felt a wave of isolation crash over me. Who could I trust? Even people I had laughed and cried with over the years might be spies in my life. Paranoia set in, making my chest tighten. I wanted to call someone, anyone, just to feel safe, but I didn't know who was really on my side. Cassidy reached across the desk and gave me a reassuring look. "You're stronger than you think," she said. "Yes, people are trying to block you, but you have the chance to fight back. You just have to stay alert, watch their moves, and be smart. Don't let them know you're suspicious yet." Her words gave me a tiny spark of hope, but the fear lingered. My parents weren't the only ones working against me. I had enemies I didn't even know I had, hiding behind smiles and casual conversations. As I left Cassidy's office, I walked slowly, thinking about every person I had trusted. Every handshake, every friendly visit, every casual piece of advice suddenly felt suspicious. The world I thought I knew was full of lies, and I had to be careful. I realized that moving forward, I couldn't just react. I had to plan, watch, and be ready for anything. Betrayal wasn't just close to me, it was everywhere. And I couldn't let it win. I decided it was time to stop just feeling angry and start doing something. I knew I couldn't go after my parents all at once. They were too careful, too controlling. But I could start small. I went through some old files Grandpa had kept and found a folder marked Callahan Estate, private. Inside were papers my parents had thought I'd never see. Hidden financial documents, letters, and notes that proved they had lied about my inheritance and tried to manipulate friends and family. My hands trembled as I read. They had been sneaky for years, taking advantage of everyone around them. I copied the important documents and made a clear summary of everything. Small enough to share with certain family friends and relatives who I knew could be trusted, and big enough to expose their lies. The next day, I started sending out pieces of the truth, carefully phrased so it wouldn't look like an attack, just corrections and clarifications. I told a few trusted family friends about minor deceptions they had been told. How my parents had lied about certain assets, pretended to support decisions that weren't theirs, and twisted stories to make me look careless or foolish. I didn't need to tell everyone everything yet. I wanted them to feel the start of doubt, to see the cracks forming without realizing I was behind it. Almost immediately, I noticed subtle changes in my parents. Rhett called me multiple times that day, his voice tight, trying to sound casual but failing. Leora kept texting, asking if I was okay and pretending to worry. Their careful masks were slipping. For the first time, I saw hesitation in them, the smallest sign that maybe they weren't in full control anymore. It was thrilling and terrifying at the same time. Satisfaction mixed with fear, because I knew this was just the first step, and now they would be watching me more closely. I couldn't let them catch on too soon. I had to stay smart, stay quiet, and keep moving forward. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like someone who could fight back, who could take control instead of letting them manipulate me. That spark of power, the knowledge that I had evidence, that I could make them sweat just a little, gave me energy I hadn't felt in a long time. I leaned back in my chair, heart still racing. This was just the beginning, a small strike in a bigger plan. But it felt like my first victory, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. I wasn't going to let them win. Not anymore. I decided I couldn't wait or hide anymore. I had the evidence in my hands, the proof of everything my parents had done, and it was time to confront them. I walked into the house, my heart pounding, carrying the folder of documents like armor. Rhett and Leora were sitting in the living room, smiling as if nothing had happened. That smile disappeared the moment I slammed the folder onto the coffee table. "Explain this," I said, my voice shaking with anger. I pushed the documents toward them, pointing at the pages that clearly showed their lies, their manipulations, and their attempts to block my inheritance. Rhett leaned back, pretending to be calm. "Maris, I don't know what you're talking about. Are you trying to accuse us of something?" Leora's tone was soft, almost sweet, but it didn't hide the edge of irritation. "Honey, maybe you're just stressed or confused. Let's talk about this calmly." I felt a burst of fury rise inside me. "Confused? You lied to me, you tricked me, and you tried to ruin me. This isn't stress, this is betrayal." Rhett's face darkened. "You don't understand the full story. You think you're smart, but you're making a mistake accusing us like this." Leora added, "If you keep going down this path, Maris, you'll regret it. Think about what you're saying before you ruin your relationship with your family." Their words stung, but they didn't shake me. The sadness of being betrayed by the people I loved was heavy, but beneath it, a fierce determination was burning. I realized in that moment that nothing they said could make me doubt what I knew to be true. I had proof. I had clarity. I trusted you, I said, my voice breaking slightly, and you used that trust to try to take everything from me. That ends now. They tried to interrupt, to twist the story, but I didn't let them. I laid out every detail calmly, showing how carefully they had manipulated me and others. I watched their confident facade crack just a little, and for the first time, I felt the balance shifting. When I left that room, my chest felt tight but powerful. The confrontation was over, and even though the fight wasn't done, something had changed. I wasn't a helpless victim anymore. I had faced them, named the truth, and no matter how much they denied it, I knew I was ready for the next step. My revenge was no longer just a thought, it was becoming real. After confronting my parents, I knew the next step had to be careful and precise. I couldn't rush this. I needed a plan that would reclaim what was mine and finally make them pay for everything they had done. I spent hours at my desk, going through all the documents, notes, and evidence I had collected. Every lie they told, every manipulation, every hidden plan was laid out before me like pieces of a puzzle. I started by making a timeline of their moves, connecting the small lies to bigger schemes. I thought about who to involve and who to avoid. Some people could help me, like Grandpa's lawyer, Cassidy, but others had shown they were secretly loyal to my parents. I had to be careful not to let anyone slip, not to hint at what I was planning too soon. Even one wrong word could ruin everything. Each night, I stayed up late, writing down strategies, imagining different scenarios, and thinking about the best time to act. I knew that if I waited too long, my parents might cover their tracks, and I would lose my chance. But if I acted too soon, I could alert them and give them a chance to fight back. Timing was everything. I also had to prepare myself emotionally. Thinking about facing them in public, exposing their greed in front of family and friends, was terrifying. But I remembered the betrayal, the manipulation, the hours of anxiety and helplessness I had endured. That anger and hurt gave me focus. I turned my fear into determination, reminding myself that I deserved justice. Part of the plan was legal. I had Cassidy review the documents, making sure every move I made was backed by evidence. I couldn't let my parents twist the story or deny the truth. Another part was social. I wanted everyone around us to see who they really were. Not in a mean way, but in a way that finally exposed the truth. As the days went by, my plan took shape. Every step was deliberate. Who to tell, when to reveal it, and how to keep myself protected. The suspense was almost unbearable, but I knew patience would pay off. My parents had underestimated me for too long, assuming I was naive and weak. For the first time, I felt the power shift. The victim was no longer passive. I was ready to reclaim what was mine, and I knew the moment I executed this plan, nothing would ever be the same. The family gathering was meant to be calm and respectful, but I knew better. Everyone was there, relatives, old friends, even a few people who had always taken my parents' side. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face steady. This was the moment everything would come out. Rhett and Leora sat across the room, acting confident, smiling like they always did. I could tell they didn't think I had the courage to do anything in front of everyone. That was their mistake. When the time was right, I stood up and asked for a moment to speak. The room went quiet. I started slowly, explaining how I had missed Grandpa's hearing and how confused I had been. Then I laid out the facts. I showed the documents, the timelines, and the proof of their lies. I explained how my parents had blocked my flight, hidden papers, and tried to control the inheritance for themselves. People began to whisper. Faces changed. The truth was impossible to ignore. Rhett jumped up, trying to interrupt. "She's lying," he said sharply. "She's emotional and confused." But I was ready. Cassidy stood beside me and calmly confirmed everything I had said. She explained the legal steps already taken and how the inheritance had now been secured in my name, just as my grandfather intended. That's when I saw it, the panic in my parents' eyes. Leora tried one last move, crying and claiming she was only protecting the family. But no one believed her anymore. Their masks had fallen, and the room could finally see them for who they were. I felt a rush of triumph, but it wasn't loud or flashy. It was quiet and steady. I had won, but the victory came with a hint of sadness. These were still my parents, and even though they had hurt me deeply, part of me wished things had been different. As the gathering ended, people avoided Rhett and Leora. Some looked at me with sympathy, others with respect. I walked out feeling lighter, knowing I had reclaimed what was mine. Not just the inheritance, but my voice and my power. The revenge wasn't about ruining them. It was about the truth finally standing in the open. And in that moment, I knew they no longer had control over my life. The house was quiet now, emptier than it had been in years. My parents had left town shortly after the family event, their plans exposed and their reputation damaged. I sat alone in my room, looking around at the space I had once shared with them, and felt a mix of relief and sadness. Things had changed forever, and I had to process it all. I thought about the betrayal, the lies, and the careful ways Rhett and Leora had tried to control me. It hurt to remember, and I felt the sting of every manipulation all over again. I realized that even though I had won the inheritance and proven the truth, the emotional scars remained. Trust, once broken, wasn't something I could just put back together. I had to rebuild it slowly, carefully, and with people who truly deserved it. At the same time, I felt a quiet strength growing inside me. I had faced my parents, confronted them with the truth, and taken back what was mine. That victory wasn't flashy or public. It was personal and powerful. For the first time, I felt fully in control of my life. The fear, the uncertainty, and the helplessness that had followed me for weeks were gone. I was free to make my own choices, and the knowledge that I had the strength to fight back gave me confidence I hadn't known before. I also thought about Grandpa Eldon. He had trusted me to step up, to see the truth, and to protect the family legacy. I hadn't just fought for money or property. I had fought to honor that trust and to stand for what was right. That understanding made the victory feel even more meaningful. Even with the empowerment, there was a quiet sadness. My parents' betrayal had left a mark that wouldn't disappear overnight. Some days I would still feel anger or grief, and that was okay. Part of moving forward was acknowledging that healing takes time. I could forgive them someday, maybe, but I wouldn't forget, and I would never let anyone control me like that again. As I stepped outside, feeling the cool evening air on my face, I smiled softly. I had reclaimed my life, my future, and my independence. The road ahead was mine to choose, filled with possibility, hope, and strength. I had survived betrayal, and I had turned it into power. That was the true victory, the quiet kind that leaves you whole, even when the past is painful. If you ever feel manipulated or blocked from what's rightfully yours, take action early. Document everything, seek trusted legal advice, and protect your rights. Learning to recognize subtle betrayal and understanding your legal options can empower you to reclaim control, safeguard your future, and build independence with confidence and clarity.